My life took an unexpected turn when Sarah, my wife, inadvertently left her phone connection active and I overheard her in a deeply flirtatious conversation with another man. The accidental call unveiled a web of deceit and my subsequent actions left her stunned and disempowered. I'm 27 and until recently I was married to Sarah, a pseudonym, of course, to protect us both. Our marriage lasted 2 years, but we were together for 4 before our world crumbled. Perhaps a bit of background is necessary. We met through mutual friends at a board game night. I know, hardly a whirlwind romance, but it suited us. We were both on the introverted side, or at least that's what I believed. Sarah was a receptionist then, and I had just received a promotion in my IT job. We immediately connected, shared a similar sense of humor, enjoyed cozy nights watching movies, and dreamt of saving for a house. Following our wedding, Sarah expressed a desire to focus on our home life rather than pursuing her career. She spoke passionately about transforming our apartment and possibly starting a small home-based business. I was earning a reasonable income, not extravagant, but sufficient to support us both with careful budgeting, so I agreed. In retrospect, that may have been the turning point, but I was oblivious at the time. Our apartment isn't spacious, but it's located in a respectable downtown area. The rent is considerable, but I wanted Sarah to feel secure walking around. When we first moved in, she was thrilled with the security system and the doorman, expressing her gratitude for my finding us such a lovely place. Lately, though, her only comments were complaints about her friend's newer, more modern buildings. I work in the tech district, about a 20-minute commute away, in a standard 9 to 5 job, though I frequently work late to resolve emergencies. Sarah used to appreciate the overtime pay, even making me small thank you dinners when I worked late. Now, she merely rolled her eyes when I texted to say I'd be late, as if I were choosing to be at work rather than addressing legitimate issues. I remember when I was first promoted at work, she turned it into a celebration, buying me a cake, telling me I was her rock, and how lucky she felt to have a husband who worked so hard for their future. She hugged me tightly and said, "I don't care how late you have to stay at work. I know you're doing it for us." That Sarah now feels like a ghost. The woman who once called me her rock grew increasingly distant and almost indifferent. I attributed it to mood swings. That Tuesday began like any other day. I woke up early and prepared for work. Sarah was still asleep. I left her breakfast in the microwave, as usual, even though she'd been complaining lately about my cooking. She used to wake up to have breakfast with me, saying it was our special time, but for the past few months, she'd been sleeping later and later, not even bothering to send a thank you text for the breakfast. I should have recognized that as a warning sign. Looking back, so many subtle changes were occurring and everything I did felt expected rather than appreciated. Work was exceptionally demanding that morning. A major software update was causing problems throughout the company. I barely had time to check my phone until lunchtime. That's when I realized Sarah hadn't texted me all morning, which was unusual. She typically sends me messages throughout the day, funny videos, photos of what she's cooking, asking what I want for dinner. I wasn't concerned or suspicious, just assumed she was busy with errands or something. So I called her during my lunch break. As soon as she answered, I sensed something was amiss. Her voice was subdued and rushed, as if she didn't want to be overheard. "Hey, I'm busy. Can I call you later?" Then she hung up, or thought she did. This is where everything started to unravel. I was about to put my phone down when I heard muffled sounds. You know how people sometimes think they've ended a call, but they haven't? That's exactly what happened. I could hear background sounds of a restaurant, clinking plates, conversations. Then I heard Sarah's voice again, but she clearly wasn't talking to me. I know some people would have immediately hung up. Maybe that would have been the right thing to do, but I was honestly bewildered. Sarah had told me she planned to deep clean the kitchen that day. Why was she at a restaurant, and why did she sound so strange? Okay, so I stayed glued to that call. Judge if you will, but a part of me is relieved that I did. Initially, I thought it might be a casual lunch with her circle of friends. Sarah doesn't work, but she spends time with a group of other stay-at-home wives. But something about the tone of her voice shifted, becoming light and flirtatious, the kind you use when you want to catch someone's attention. She addressed someone as sweetheart and giggled. An odd feeling settled in my stomach, that familiar dread that precedes something terrible. I remained there, in my office chair, frozen in place, my half-eaten sandwich forgotten on my desk. The longer I listened, the worse it became. She was showering someone with compliments, saying how handsome they looked and how they should spend more time together. Then she started making fun of me, implying I was dense, and laughing as she did it. I couldn't believe it. There's no way. This couldn't possibly be happening. My mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. Maybe it was an inside joke, or perhaps she was just trying to be nice to an acquaintance. But the longer I listened, the harder it became to dismiss the reality of the situation. Every flirtatious comment, every light-hearted laugh, eroded the flimsy justifications I was desperately trying to create. This is not the woman I know. This is not our life. My hands began to tremble, my pulse pounding in my ears. I told myself to stop, to hang up and trust her, but I was incapable of it. I felt the need to hear everything, clinging to the futile hope that this was all one huge misunderstanding, that at any moment she would say something to disprove my suspicions. But she never did. It turns out that the man who worked tirelessly to make sure she could stay at home was clueless. The man who supported her decision not to pursue a career, who paid every single bill, who constantly tried to give her everything she desired, that man was a joke to her. It made me sick. The tone of Sarah's voice transformed completely when she spoke to this person, becoming sweet and playful, reminiscent of our early days together. She continued to say things like, "You always know what to say, and I love how you just get me." Every word made my stomach churn. Because I work in IT, recording things is practically automatic for me. We routinely record important meetings and calls for documentation purposes. I had this app on my phone that I had used to record a client meeting the previous month. Without thinking, I pressed record. Looking back, that decision likely spared me from a lot of drama further down the road. The things I recorded. Sarah was positively gushing over this guy. "You're so different from him," she exclaimed. "He's always talking about budgets and saving for a house. It's so boring. You know how to have fun." That comment stung. Of course I talk about budgets, since I'm the one taking care of every single financial aspect of our lives, including the phone bill she was using to criticize me. Then she began discussing their plans. Apparently, they'd been meeting up whenever I worked late, the extra hours I put in to provide her with a better life. She was using that time to see him. Nice, right? Do you remember the promotion I was trying to get, the one she claimed to be so proud of me for seeking? Well, she complained to him about how much time I was spending at work. The most excruciating part was hearing her laugh about me, not just gentle giggles, but genuine, hearty laughter. He's so focused on his computer stuff. He doesn't even notice when I dress up anymore, but you always notice. I wanted to shout through the phone that I did notice. I noticed every single thing. I remember how my heart would soar whenever I surprised her with small gifts, how she'd sink into my embrace, all the tension melting away after a draining day. She once told me that my presence made her feel secure, and that was why she loved me. But at some point, that feeling of safety, that connection, wasn't enough for her anymore. I was relentlessly pursuing a better future for us, sacrificing my own desires without her even noticing the effort. I couldn't afford to take her to fancy restaurants every week or constantly buy her new clothes. I was solely responsible for keeping a roof over our heads, handling the bills, ensuring our financial stability. And now she was ridiculing me for it, laughing with some other guy. They continued chatting and I kept recording, my heart pounding in my chest. A part of me desperately wanted to end the call, but I knew I needed irrefutable evidence. Reddit had taught me that much, always have proof. Then I heard something that jolted me upright. "This new bistro is amazing," she gushed. "Thank you for bringing me here." Instantly, I knew it was that upscale place that had recently opened near our apartment, the one she had deemed a frivolous waste of money when I suggested celebrating our anniversary there. Apparently, it wasn't too wasteful for the state. The place she had previously considered pretentious was now suddenly amazing. I now knew exactly where they were. While I was just sitting there, utterly stunned, my coworker Steve passed by my office. He must have sensed that something was terribly wrong because he stopped and asked if I was okay. I probably looked like I'd seen a ghost, a wave of nausea washing over me. I told him I might have to leave early. He simply nodded, offering to cover for me. Steve is such a decent guy. The recording was still running. Sarah and this man were discussing meeting again next week at the same time. He suggested perhaps we could try that new sushi restaurant you mentioned. She giggled, that particular, familiar giggle she used to make when I made her laugh. Perfect. She then said he suspects absolutely nothing. He thinks I'm just at home cleaning or whatever. The bistro they were in was only a 15-minute drive from my office. I knew exactly where it was. I drove past it every day on my way home. This guy, whoever he was sitting there at that moment, undoubtedly feeling self-satisfied. And my wife, the woman I had supported for 2 years, was there laughing at my expense. So I drove there, my rage slowly boiling over. Upon arriving, I saw them together. I sat there for a moment, simply watching, a whirlwind of thoughts racing through my mind. Should I confront them? Should I call her again? Or should I just drive away and pretend none of this ever happened? But then, I heard her laugh through my phone again, that carefree laugh she used to have when we first started dating, a laugh I hadn't heard in months because, apparently, I wasn't worth laughing for anymore. Suddenly, everything became clear, like those moments when you finally understand something that has been perplexing you for ages. All those times she claimed she was too tired to go out with me but somehow had enough energy to keep the house spotless. Yeah, now I knew where her energy was really going. I checked my recording app. 47 minutes of audio so far, 47 minutes of my wife on a date with another man, laughing about how naive I was, the guy who worked 50-hour weeks to enable her to stay home. The guy who never questioned the inexplicably high grocery bills lately, the guy who believed her when she said she needed expensive face creams for her sensitive skin. Before getting out of the car, I texted Steve from work, family emergency. Might need a few days off. He replied almost immediately, got you covered, man. Take care. At least someone in my life wasn't deceiving me. Walking into that bistro was the longest walk of my life. The host attempted to stop me. Sir, do you have a reservation? But I simply walked past him, my focus only on Sarah. I could still hear her voice through my phone, but now I could also hear it in person, emanating from a corner table partially obscured by some plants. The image of them together is permanently seared into my memory. Sarah was wearing a new blue dress I'd never seen before, her hair meticulously styled, not in the messy bun she usually wore when I came home from work. She was leaning in close to this guy, playfully toying with her necklace in the same way she used to do when she was flirting with me. He was exactly the type, wasn't he? The kind you see in magazine ads, all polished and confident, the kind who probably spends more on his watch than I make in a week. Designer clothes, immaculate haircut, probably a realtor, I figured. Someone who can casually waste a Tuesday afternoon sipping cocktails. And Sarah? God, Sarah was practically glued to him, craning her neck to see something on his phone. I stood there, unnoticed, for what felt like an eternity, just watching her. It was like she was playing a part, a role she'd never shown me. The Sarah I married scrutinized every grocery bill, obsessed over coupons. This Sarah was nursing some brightly colored, undoubtedly overpriced drink at 2 in the afternoon. It's strange, but the overwhelming emotion wasn't anger. I thought I'd be furious, I should have been furious. Instead, there was just this hollow ache, a chilling emptiness, as if I were a detached observer watching someone else's life unravel. 2 years of marriage for years of us. All those late nights I pulled at the office, the sacrifices I made so she could pursue her dreams, the constant prioritizing of her needs, it all seemed meaningless. Every compromise, every moment I believed we were building a shared future, just gone. Standing there, watching her flirt with this stranger, the realization crashed over me, our marriage wasn't just strained, it was dead. Sarah was the first to see me as I walked closer. One glance and the blood seemed to drain from her face. I actually worried she might faint. Mr. Perfect was still engrossed in his phone, completely clueless. Then she knocked over her glass. The clatter finally got his attention. He looked up, saw me, and then his gaze flickered to Sarah, confusion clouding his features. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cause a scene. I simply walked up to the table and stopped. The restaurant wasn't packed, but a few heads definitely turned, sensing the impending drama. A waiter froze mid-stride, probably calculating the odds of needing to call security. Having a good time? I managed to choke out. My voice sounded distant, unfamiliar. Sarah instantly plastered on a fake, overly bright smile. Oh. Hi. This is Tom from my online cooking class. We were just discussing recipes. Her voice was unnaturally high-pitched, the same tone she used when dealing with telemarketers. You should join us. Tom looked bewildered, clearly wondering what was going on. She just kept digging. We're actually planning a surprise dinner for you. That's why I've been so secretive lately. It was almost fascinating watching her spin a web of lies so effortlessly, so quickly. A surprise dinner? I repeated, my voice flat. With the man you've been calling sweetheart for the past hour? Her smile faltered, then froze completely. What are you talking about? Tom's eyes darted back and forth between us, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. I pulled out my phone. You forgot to hang up earlier. I've been listening for almost an hour now. The last vestiges of color vanished from her face. Tom's eyes widened as the pieces finally clicked into place. Wait, you're her husband? She told me you were her ex. Sarah tried to cut him off. Tom, please? It's not what it looks like. She turned to me, desperately attempting to regain control of the situation. You're misunderstanding everything. We're just friends. That's when I hit play. Just a short snippet of the recording, her giggling about how oblivious I was, calling Tom sweetheart, talking about how much she was enjoying this. The ensuing silence was thick and heavy. Tom started gathering his belongings. "I should go," he mumbled, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Look, man, she told me you guys were separated." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Tom, wait. Don't leave." But he yanked his arm away and practically fled the restaurant. That's when the mask completely shattered. The sugary sweetness, the feigned innocence, vanished without a trace. "Well," she said, her voice hard and brittle, "I guess you know now. This marriage has never felt right to me. He's so emotionally distant, a workaholic, constantly focused on finances." I noticed people were staring. A few even had their phones out, probably hoping to capture something scandalous. "I feel stifled," I blurted out, my voice rising unintentionally. "All I hear about is saving money, his career ambitions. Tom actually makes an effort to connect with me, takes me out." I pulled out the credit card statement from my purse. "Like here? A place he deemed too expensive when I suggested it? Apparently, it's affordable when someone else is footing the bill." I saw a flicker of discomfort on her face. The restaurant manager approached, radiating that practiced concern you find in upscale establishments. Seeing him, she abruptly shifted gears and tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake. Let's fix this." But her words rang hollow, like a performance. The manager spoke, his voice smooth. "Is everything all right here?" She forced a smile through the fake tears. "Yes, we're fine. My husband was just—" I interrupted. "I was just leaving. We were discussing divorce." The word hung in the air. The manufactured tears vanished instantly, replaced by a hard expression. "You can't just decide that," she snapped. "We need to discuss this. You're overreacting." I placed enough cash on the table to cover their meal. I wasn't about to let her run up any more charges on my cards. "There's nothing to discuss," I said firmly. She made her choice. Now she can deal with the consequences. I turned and walked away, leaving her with her pricey, half-eaten lunch and her failed attempts at manipulation. As I sat in my car, the adrenaline began to fade and the reality of the situation started to sink in. My phone started buzzing incessantly with calls from her. I switched it off and sat there for a moment, trying to process what I needed to do. My analytical side, honed over years of solving technical problems, kicked in. First, protect myself. I opened my banking app and began the process of restricting her access to my accounts. Secondary credit card canceled, the bulk of our joint checking account transferred to my personal account. I left enough for her to manage for a week, which frankly was more than she deserved. Next, documentation. I emailed the recording to myself and created 3 separate backups. Noticing a man walk past my car, I realized I was still parked in the restaurant parking lot. She could emerge at any moment. I drove to my bank first. The teller probably noticed something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I handed her my ID. "I need to remove someone from my accounts," I explained. She became serious as I explained the situation and began to share a similar experience her sister had gone through. While at the bank, she texted me from her friend Jessica's phone. "You're being ridiculous. Answer your phone. We need to talk about this like adults." The words echoed in my head, mocking me. Like adults don't sneak around, betray trust, and then act surprised when everything blows up. After blocking Jessica's number, I headed to the bank. The woman there was surprisingly helpful, guiding me through setting up completely new accounts. She said it was a safety measure, a precaution against messy divorce scenarios where one partner tries to bleed the other dry. She handed me a packet about financial security during separation. It felt surreal, like something you read about, not something that happens to you. Next, our apartment loomed large in my mind. On the drive over, Sarah bombarded me with texts from a constantly changing stream of numbers, undoubtedly working her way through her entire contact list. "You can't just cut me off," she wrote in one, followed by another. "What am I supposed to do about money? You're being cruel." Each new number met the same fate, blocked. Stepping inside the apartment felt strange, tainted. I made a beeline for the drawer where I kept my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, passport. Everything was there, untouched. A small wave of relief washed over me. At least she hadn't touched those. Then I went to our safe. Inside, I found the wedding rings, a small stash of cash, and my grandmother's watch. All accounted for. I was halfway through a mental inventory when I heard her key turning in the lock. Of course, she'd come straight home. I quickly zipped up my bag, but it was too late. She came in before I could leave. Her makeup was smeared across her face, a testament to the emotional roller coaster she'd been on. The fake tears, I guessed, had turned real at some point. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded, her voice a shaky blend of anger and desperation. "You can't just walk out on our marriage." I tried to sidestep her, but she blocked the doorway. "We need to talk about this." You can't just cut off my cards and empty our account. That stopped me cold. Our account? You mean my account, the one that only ever saw my paycheck, the one that paid for everything because you decided working was beneath you? Her face flushed red. I take care of our home. That was our agreement. No, I said, shaking my head. Our agreement was that you'd start a business from home. 2 years later, still no business, just a lot of lunches I didn't know about. She reached for my bag, trying to grab it. Give me my card back. You can't just leave me with nothing. I yanked the bag away from her. I left enough in the joint account for a week. Call your parents. Call Tom. Call whoever you want. Not my problem anymore. The tears flowed again, this time genuine. Please, she begged, her voice cracking. I made a mistake. I was stupid. We can fix this. Something inside me snapped when she said, we can fix this. Maybe it was the casual way she used we, as if I was equally responsible for her infidelity. Or maybe it was the sheer audacity of it all, the weight of everything crashing down at once. I looked at her, standing there, a mess of tears and smeared mascara, and I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Fix what exactly? I asked, my voice flat. The part where you laughed about me being clueless, or the part where you spent my money on dates with another guy? She tried to grab my arm again, but I recoiled. That's when she got desperate. I'll tell everyone you abused me, she spat out, her voice suddenly cold and hard. I'll tell them you controlled all the money, kept me trapped at home. I pulled out my phone and her eyes widened in panic. Go ahead. I've got an hour of you bragging about how you fooled me. Want me to send that to everyone we know? She shifted tactics again, launching into a story about her friend Amy who went through a horrific divorce and lost everything, how her friend's husband hired a ruthless lawyer who destroyed her in court. The fear in her eyes was palpable. But it was too little too late. I guess that whole scene was supposed to intimidate me, force me to stay put. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Her mom was now bombarding me with texts, one after another. Sarah's completely falling apart. What did you do to her? Then her sister sent me this massive paragraph going on and on about how marriage takes effort, how running away solves absolutely nothing. Even her dad sent me a message which was just plain bizarre because he barely knows how to even text message. As far as I was concerned, I had to get out of there. When I tried to leave again, Sarah blocked the door. She launched into this whole speech about how she'd hurt herself if I left, claiming she couldn't possibly live without me. It was all classic manipulation tactics. That's when I started surreptitiously recording with my phone again, didn't say a word, just let it run in my pocket. Move, I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. She became even more frantic, saying she'd call the police, tell them I hit her or something. I stayed as calm as possible, just continuing the recording. There are security cameras in the hallway, Sarah, I reminded her, keeping my voice steady. Our apartment building installed them last year, after all those packages got stolen. Her face visibly dropped. She'd forgotten all about them. She immediately switched gears, trying to bargain with me, saying we could go to counseling, that she'd get a job, pay me back everything she owed, even let me track her phone, check her messages, give me all her passwords. She promised she'd do anything to prove how sorry she was. But the thing is, I didn't want any of that. I didn't want to check her messages or track her location. I didn't want to become some controlling husband who monitors his wife's every single move. That's not a marriage, that's a prison sentence for both of us. I already called my parents, she announced next, desperation in her voice. They supposedly told her that I couldn't just kick her out because she had tenant rights. I almost laughed out loud at that. You're not a tenant, Sarah. You've never paid a single bill in your life. But I wasn't going to argue. Fine. Stay here tonight. I'll be back with actual legal papers tomorrow. That really got to her, the reality of actual divorce papers. Then she began throwing out random accusations. I worked too much, never gave her enough attention, pushed her into staying home, was emotionally unavailable, cold, distant, all the greatest hits of blame shifting. My phone buzzed again. It was my friend Mike, asking if I needed a place to crash. I'd texted him earlier as a just-in-case measure. Sarah saw the message preview pop up and completely lost it, started screaming about how I'd planned this, that I'd been waiting for an excuse to leave her all along. I managed to get out of the apartment and into the elevator before she could catch up. She kept screaming from our doorway about how I was making a massive mistake, how I'd regret this forever, how no one would ever love me like she did. The elevator doors closed, finally cutting off her screaming. I finally allowed myself to take a deep, shaky breath. My phone was full of missed calls, text messages, and a bunch of social media notifications. Apparently, Sarah had posted some cryptic status about fighting for her marriage. You know, typical social media drama. Mike was waiting in his car outside, he's a good friend. He didn't ask any questions, just popped his trunk for my bag. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Sarah in our apartment window, probably trying to figure out whose car I was getting into. She'd already tried calling Mike's phone multiple times, but he wisely ignored it. The next morning, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. I woke up in Mike's spare room, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling while my phone displayed a ridiculous number of new voicemails from unknown numbers. Apparently, Sarah had spent the entire night calling everyone we knew using their phones after I blocked hers. I called work first. My boss was surprisingly understanding about everything and told me to take the week off to get my stuff sorted. Then I called a divorce lawyer that my coworker had recommended. The lawyer listened to my recording and said something that really stuck with me. Your wife is about to realize that actions have consequences. Sarah sure didn't wait long to show her true colors. By noon, the money was gone. My money, the money I'd foolishly left in our joint account, all of it vanished. Then came the frantic attempt to use our emergency credit card, an attempt that failed because I'd already, thankfully, frozen it. That's when it all really spiraled out of control. A lengthy, vitriolic Facebook post appeared accusing me of financially abandoning her. Then came the messages to my family filled with fabricated stories of how I'd somehow forced her to stay home and controlled every penny, driving her into some supposed depression. My sister actually called and burst out laughing. Isn't it funny she never brought up any of this before today, she said. My lawyer was fantastic and fast. Divorce papers were ready almost immediately. The next day when Sarah was served, she completely lost it. I heard a crash followed by another, then another. I walked outside to see my gaming PC, clothes, books, anything she could get her hands on, raining down from our balcony. The neighbors called the police, thankfully. And you know, those hallway cameras finally paid off. She tried to convince the cops that I was abusive, but they weren't buying her story for a second. One officer actually said, "Ma'am, we have security footage of you throwing things off the balcony." She got a warning and I was given a police escort to collect my belongings. Walking through our apartment with those officers was an out-of-body experience. Sarah followed us from room to room, alternating between hysterical crying and screaming. She kept saying she'd sign the papers if I just gave her another chance. When that didn't work, she launched into a litany of everything she'd sacrificed for our marriage as if I'd forced her to do it. One of the cops looked incredibly uncomfortable, but the other just had this seen-it-all expression. He was the one who helped me gather my important documents, all the while his partner kept Sarah occupied in the living room. I found out later he'd gone through something very similar with his ex-wife. Over the next few weeks, the harassment continued. I swear it felt like she pulled out every stop in the book. She showed up at my work, sobbing. She sent her friends to try and talk sense into me. She even tried to get her father to threaten me with some bogus lawsuit about common law property rights, something that isn't even a thing in our state. Then Tom, the guy from that bistro, actually reached out to me and sent me proof that Sarah had told him she was separated and finalizing her divorce. I guess he felt guilty about being part of it. He even had texts confirming they'd been meeting for months, more evidence for my lawyer. The divorce itself? Well, we don't live in a no-fault state, so it was pretty straightforward once Sarah realized she had absolutely no leverage. The recording of her trashing my stuff put an end to any claims of abuse or control. Her lawyer practically begged her to settle after hearing it. She walked away with basically what she came in with, her personal belongings and her car, which I signed over to her just to be rid of her once and for all. That was 4 months ago. The last I heard, she moved back in with her parents. She still makes fake social media accounts to check up on me, I know that, but it's just background noise now. She tried dating Tom again, but apparently he wasn't interested in a relationship where he'd have to be footing the bill for every fancy lunch. My new apartment is much smaller, yes, but it's mine. No more suspicious bank statements and surprise charges. No more lies about staying home cleaning while she was spending my money on dates with someone else. People sometimes ask if I regret how things ended. Honestly, I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But that phone call, finding out about the affair when I did, that was a strange gift. Imagine if I'd found out years later, with children involved. Sometimes the worst day of your life ends up saving you from an even worse future. Mike still has me over for game nights. My sister visits more often now. Even my neighbor from my old building sends me cookies through her grandson who works near my office. Life is definitely different, and it's better. It's more honest. Yesterday, I walked past the bistro where everything blew up, looked through the window, and saw a couple having lunch. The guy was glued to his phone, not paying any attention to his date. It made me wonder if history was repeating itself with someone else. I almost wanted to go in and warn her, but that's not my problem anymore. I have my new place, my job, my peace of mind. The trust issues might take some time to work through, but hey, at least I'm not paying for someone else's secret lunch dates anymore.